Here's a disturbing story being reported on by Alternate. Teen busted for pot, then raped by New York City cops. Whoa. A New York City grand jury indicted 2 Brooklyn narcotics officers late last week on charges they raped an 18-year-old woman after arresting her for smoking marijuana. The victim says she was assaulted while handcuffed in the back of a police van in the parking lot of a Chipotle restaurant in September. The 2 narcotics officers, Eddie Martins and Richard Hall, faced charges of first-degree rape. The victim, who posts on social media under the name Anna Chambers, alleges that both narcs forced her to perform oral sex on them, and one of them raped her. According to Chambers, she and 2 young men were pulled over by Martins and Hall for smoking pot, and they targeted her after finding prescription drugs in the car. The narcs told her companions to leave before ordering her to undress so they could search for drugs. They didn't find any drugs on her, but handcuffed the teen anyway before coercing her into sex, her attorney, Michael David, said. You'll spend 3 hours in the precinct, they allegedly told her. They also allegedly said, this is what you're going to do for us, and we'll let you go, David said. There was zero consent, David said. The cops were over 6 feet tall. She's very petite, like 5'2" and maybe 100 pounds. There's nothing she could do. The grand jury issued the indictments October 26 after hearing a week of testimony, including testimony on the stand from Chambers. The narcs were not arrested upon indictment, but are expected to turn themselves in this week. They have been placed on modified duty and stripped of their guns and badges and are now suspended without pay. They're looking at between 3 and 25 years in prison if convicted. The detectives from NYPD's Brooklyn South Narcotics Squad have not denied that they engaged in sex acts with Chambers, but claimed they were consensual. They spent the past week trying to discredit and impugn their accuser. Okay, so, I think there's somebody who's proposing a bill in the wake of this who's saying, no, it should always, how there's like statutory rape where it can be consensual sex, but it's still rape if the guy's like 40 years old and the girl's 13. They go, well, yeah, even if you think there's consent, a 13-year-old really can't consent because they're not exactly sure what they're consenting to. So no, we're not going to, you're likely manipulated. The 40-year-old likely manipulated the 13-year-old, so no, we're not. That's against the law. That's statutory rape. Well, what they're saying is, somebody proposed a bill that said anytime a cop engages in a sex act with somebody they're fucking pulling over or some shit, well, that's rape because the cop has a badge, has authority, so it is manipulation by definition. Even if you think there's consent or whatever, no, that's. Because you put somebody in a position where there's pressure, there's authority, you can pull rank on them if you're the officer, and so you can coerce somebody into doing something like a sex act. So there's a bill being proposed now where they say, hey, maybe anytime somebody's an officer and they're having sex with somebody they pull over, somebody they stop, that should be considered rape or a version of rape. But yeah, the cops are saying no, it was consensual. She's saying no, it was not consensual, and this is all going to be adjudicated. But I think the most important point is, listen, we need to take away the ability of the officers to even breach a conversation with people like this in the first place. If we didn't have the drug war, they wouldn't have the excuse to pull them over or to start talking to them in the first place. That seems to be the catalyst which led to all this fallout. But that really is, if you think about it, the drug war, it's just a license for officers to harass people. If you're peacefully doing a substance where you're tweaking your own consciousness, that law enforcement shouldn't be able to say, I disagree and that's illegal and let me maybe lock you up now. So let's get rid of it, man. So many problems that people have with cops can be eliminated overnight if you just take away the drug war, which initiates, a lot of the circumstances which lead to there being further problems. The drug war, we've cited this statistic a million times, but black people and white people smoke marijuana at a similar rate. Black people get arrested for it 4 times more often. How many lives of poor white people and people of color have been destroyed because of the drug war? You have a mass incarceration crisis because of the drug war. Some people have gotten life in prison because of a nonviolent drug crime. If you just get rid of that, and make it so that the cops are only, hey, your job is to, enforce the law and arrest people if there's assault or rape or murder or all this stuff. You make it so that whenever anybody sees an officer, they go, oh, thank God, the fucking heroes are here. But if the officers are getting in people's private lives when they shouldn't and telling them what substance they can and can't take and trying to arrest them for something like that, they're going to become an enemy to the public, of course, because the public doesn't want to be harassed when they're not really committing a crime. So end the drug war and end it now. We need to do it. That's the only way to stop stuff like this or reduce stuff like this from happening in the future.